do you think that you've seen it around in your workplace? Do you think that they exist in the workplace, or do you think that they generally just group black people as like one?
Good point, actually. So in my workplace, where I work currently, is in Essex. Those of you that know Essex, it can be a very, very racist place. So colorism doesn't really exist as such there. It is, you're all one and the same. You're all black and that's it. You're all together. Yeah. So at work, I would say colorism exists less so.
Yeah.
But yeah, racism is very, very prominent. Nice. Also, I've experienced colorism in relationships.
In relationships?
Well. Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So again, you're not good enough for my daughter. You're too dark. So
would they prefer a lighter skin guy? Would they prefer like a white guy?
Thank you. Why are you laughing, bro? Yeah.
Thank you. What's it up?
I don't know if it. Do you know what? And again, it's a shame, right? Because they're Jamaican as well. Like this is what kills me, bro. Right? We're all Caribbean, but yeah. And we're all Jamaican. So I'm just like, what? Like, but it is, again, man, it's just one of them things. But I'm not a silent person, so I will challenge it. I will speak up with respect, of course, like it's your parents or it's your older siblings. Cool. But I challenged it. And it's just it's for me, it's quite it's a sad mentality that people have. Right. There's no real reason behind it. You can't prove to me that you're any better than myself because you're light skinned or you're lighter. Yeah. Like, okay.
So did you feel like it was in this particular relationship, or even just, I guess, in other situations, do you feel like it had to be your responsibility to challenge that, or should it have been that person challenging their own family members and their own views?
Definitely. Well, I can't really say it should have been the person. It shouldn't have been my partner because it depends on my partner's mindset. But then I would question, why are you with me? If you think the same as your siblings or your family, then why are you with me? So in that respect, yes, you should challenge your family, 100%. Is it also my place? Yeah, because I feel away. So I could stay silent, but then what am I really proving by staying silent? So, of course, if I see something happening, whether I see it happening to another or it's happening to myself, I do think it is for me to also challenge. Even if it's happening to someone else, it's still my place to challenge. Say that again, sorry?
I said, we're going to come back to a question that is touching on that topic, so I'm glad you brought it up. Aishanti, how about yourself?
Yeah, no, I think I laugh because I feel like a lot of this is a lot of ignorance, and you'll find that colorism has a lot to do, not necessarily so much, it's very prominent in the black community within ourselves, which is like you mentioned, like if you're black to a white black, you're all black. But within the black community itself, you have people that do that as well. So that's why I was laughing, because I'm like, that sounds like you're too dark for my daughter. Like, and a large part of that obviously is like, as we just discussed last week, is like slavery. Like it all comes back from like slavery, where, you know, the lighter you are, the closer you're allowed to stay in the house.
Right. And you're treated better, so forth.
Yeah, like that's the whole thing. The demonization of like your skin color has been done like through slavery, and it's a shame that it's a shame we are at that point. If someone's mom says to me like, "You're too dark for my daughter," I'm like, "You're so ignorant." I wouldn't say that, but I'll think you're ignorant. Like you're so ignorant to the point where that.
So what would you say? Would you say anything at all? Do you think you need to say anything at all?
I would absolutely address it. I would just say the reason you think that is literally because you think that white is right, and you want to be associated with white in some way or form, on a deeper level. But I think I would definitely, I don't get on well with people like that because I'll get on their nerves because I would literally I'll probably laugh and then I'll probably say, like, you were probably a house person.
So, a house person.
So like, no, it's legit though. Like, that's what I mean. I feel like a lot of it stems from that. And
yeah.
And like you said, like even in Africa, the number one selling product is bleach. In India, the number one selling product is bleach. And it's like, it's so sad. And it's a lot deeper than, you know, the parents sometimes just saying stuff, but they don't know why they're saying it, but they've been conditioned to say that again. So I've definitely experienced it in that setting. No one's actually ever come to me and says, "Oh, you're too dark" or whatever. But you get a vibe from people often that when you're a certain shade, they don't want to rock with you. I've had people getting in my car once, and they were like, "Oh, I'm light skinned. I should get up front." I'm like, "Get in the back." No, but it's true. Like, they're like pretty light skinned people in the front, like dark skinned people in the back, and I'm like, "No."
They were joking, but they're joking. They must be joking.
Yeah, but they're joking. But in every joke, there's like 10-15% truth, right?
Yeah.
They're thinking that they believe that to some extent. So I was like, "Yo, get in the back." Dark skinned people up front. And yeah, you can see it. And that person's from the Caribbean as well, coincidentally. So I definitely feel like when you look at where it's coming from, most of the times, white people are either really racist or, and the opposite is black people are colorist, a lot more colorist than white people, I would say. Obviously, the media is very conscious of, they put light-skinned people to make you closer to white. That's a different story. I'm talking about colorism in itself is something that we practice heavily within our communities. And that's literally because we've been taught to do so through the media, particularly.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think that have you seen instances of this at work, for example? Do you think it's present within the workplace or not so much? It's much more like within social settings.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think within work, I haven't seen it. I can't say I've seen it because I'm like paper bag on the lower end of the paper bag. I don't know. I'm like, do you know the paper bag test? Something they do. Okay, so the paper bag test is something that they did back in the day with television. And then they used to say, basically, hold up a paper bag next to a black person. And if they're darker than the paper bag, they have to get to the back. And if they're lighter than the paper bag, they get put on stage and so on. There's stuff like auditions, stuff like if you watch the Motown movie, you'll see like examples of that.
What?
When it's called a paper bag test. You can Google it. It's quite interesting. So I think I haven't experienced colorism, but I know that for me to be in a room, I know it's there. I know.
Yeah, yeah, you can see it.
Like light skin privilege and like team light. There's this like, what was it? Team light skin, team dark skin.
Mm-hmm.
All of this.
And I think people do it jokingly, but not realizing how much it adds to a certain narrative or way of thinking, for sure. Chris?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, so like, in all honesty, I think it's down to conditioning as well. So I'm, for want of a better word, like I'm more of like a new convert to a certain extent. So my focus has always been on like the bigger fights, looking at racism, etc. Mm-hmm. And I think my upbringing hasn't necessarily helped me like realize these things. So in terms of like being born in an African country in Nigeria, right, everything I saw was black. So in Hughes, etc., were like the first book I saw, I just remember was like black Nigerian kids. So that and the skin tones were all like different tones. It tended to be darker tones anyway. Even like the movies before, I know like Nollywood movies maybe like have moved away in terms of having more lighter skinned people. But one of the first ones I remember watching was Violated, and like the two love interests were like just my skin tone. I don't know necessarily darker than that, but they weren't like light skinned. They're just like you're very natural ladies, isn't it? But I'm someone who's more very evidence based. So it's funny, like Shank and Isaac were talking about how you would speak, like the mother who said you're too dark for their kid. It wouldn't even be like anger anymore. It's just like you're a victim and like you need to be educated. So you kind of feel sorry for them.
Right.
They've been so conditioned to think that it's a degree of like self-hatred. So I'm very much like evidence-based. And I know you're probably going to touch on this, but people wonder like, why are we talking about this within like the Christian context? But if you look at incarceration, the people who tend to be in prison aren't just like black people, tend to be people of a darker hue color. The people tend to be expelled aren't just black people, it tends to be people of a darker skin color, while the people who are less likely to get married aren't just black women, it is darker skinned black women. So that's like evidence where it's to educate people. And that's not just within the black community. When I was talking about this program to my colleague who is Indian, she was like, this is something they experience in her community. She's like, the darker skinned Indians are kind of like pushed as second-class citizens, whereas like the lighter ones, obviously first-class citizens. And all this stems from this branches of racism, but it breeds like self-hate. So I think sometimes like people get obviously passionate and they tell people like these things happen. But for me, it's like I generally just feel sorry for everyone because like we're kind of victims and being conditioned to think a certain way. And so evidence it just shows like it's a thing. it's not just someone's opinion, but it's something that exists as well.
Yeah, that's. I think that's two things. That's a very mature way of looking at it, because it's so easy, right, for someone who is racist or discriminatory in some way. It's so easy for you to kind of be offended and get upset with them and have that exchange with them in that way. But I think one thing especially, which we'll definitely touch on and discuss even more, and we can even touch on it as we go through these next questions, is that's probably the better approach and the Christian approach, as we all should be, I guess, implying, is that some of these people are, as you said, victim of miseducation, victim of ignorance, in a sense. But it's easier said than done, I think. So have you, just quickly, have any of you guys felt any kind of way about your blackness or about your skin tone? And this could be due to either colorism or racism. Do you think that you've felt any kind of way, really, like internally, like you've pointed out that this person is ignorant, but have you felt any kind of way about yourself, you think? Yeah, no?
I think that's an interesting one. I think when you were when I was younger, in particular in school, you notice that guys will cuss you. They'll be like, "Oh, you have big lips, you have like big nose," or people get cussed. African, for example, and your accent and stuff like that. As Chris calls it, has been practiced by young kids or us doing it. So I think to some extent we all have. When you get into like joking match or cussing matches with people when you're younger, they go straight for your features.
Yeah.
They'll be like, "Oh, you're so blick," or like,
right.
How many times have you heard that? And it seems like it's like universal, like through all the schools, no one teaches them these things. Like no one actually goes out to say, "I'm going to teach you to cuss someone." They coincidentally, I say, go and all address the same thing. So clearly something is informing them that whatever this skin color or this person's feature is off. It's not right. Do you know what I mean? And it needs to be cussed. So the media is doing a crazy job at just informing how we see each other, especially like dark-skinned kids, as Chris calls it.
Right. Just to bring the ladies into the discussion, I wanted to ask, have you seen or even been a perpetrator of colorism? So not to kind of put that harsh word on you, ladies. Welcome, ladies. How are you? You all right? Good to see you. Kelly, me think you're asleep. Well, good.
Hi.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of the times, like if we're being honest, a lot of young men, they do things for the attention, for the admiration, especially of young women, right? That's why my friend from school had bleached his skin, is because the girls love the lighter skinned guys, and he was like, you know what, I need to get the girls, rub up and all these things. Have you guys seen that within your own circle of friends growing up? Have you seen it within yourself? Or have you just seen it at all within your community growing up towards men or young boys? You start with Eleanor.
Hey, can you hear me? Yeah. So I have to think back to like secondary school days, because that's when it was, or in childhood, that's when it was quite, I guess, more prominent than it is now. I guess it was, to a certain extent, colorism, or like there was this one girl, she was quarter white, but she was 3/4 black, but she looked like she didn't have no white in her, but she was very proud to say that she was a quarter white. And then her brother was also same mix as well, but he was more, he looked more mixed race. So he had like looser curled hair. He had like almost like light brown colored eyes and stuff like that. And so I could see it there, like the preference to be lighter or to be associated with whiteness was there during school. For me personally, I've not really felt that kind of like, I've never really felt like affected by colorism, except for the cusses where you say, "Oh yeah, you're your foot's dry, do you know what I mean? Or like you're so dark and you're black and you're, I mean, I remember one girl called me like bubble lips or something like that. I was thinking, like, you're black with me. You're black too. Do you know what I mean? So it was just like, I didn't understand those kind of things. But yeah,
well, you haven't seen it that much when it comes to favoring light-skinned guys and stuff like that growing up.
I mean, I guess like everyone used to like Craig Davis. I don't know if anyone, online. Yeah, everyone used to like Craig Davis or in BTK.
Careful.
Or in BTK, nobody was really looking for J Boog, but everyone loved Lil Fizz. I don't know if you guys know who that. No. Too far. Yeah. So Lil Fizz was basically mixed race, and J Boog was the black one. Yeah, so there was preference for guys in terms of that, like, yeah. But I mean, typically, if you was a guy in school, I mean, girls liked you, yeah. So it didn't kind of really matter.
Let me just throw this. This question just came to me. I just throw this to you, and I guess I'll throw it around as well. Would you say colorism is the same, or is it the same thing as colorism when girls fetishize over a guy's skin tone, like saying, "Oh, we love dark skinned men, like love the Tyrese and all of that." If you know who Tyrese is, he's a gentleman that sings songs. And do you think that's the
Can I just say, like, this shows our age, and you guys are pulling out old references. Like,
that's not an old reference.
Hey,
he's not old.
Tyrese.
What more do you want from me?
Tyrese is relevant now. He's still relevant. Yeah.
Dude, when you say that, that's colorism as well. Like when the media goes after dark-skinned guys, but just because of a fetish in a sense.
Yeah. I mean, but there's, I guess.
Or is colorism just discriminating against someone, putting someone down because of the skin tone, as opposed to uplifting them up because they have the trending skin tone, so to speak?
Yeah, so I had that as a question. I didn't know is reverse colorism possible? Like that was a question for me. But in terms of like, for me, for men, it's okay to be whatever color shade of black you are. But then for women, it's more preferred to be light skinned. That's my understanding. Because
No, go on, finish.
Yeah, because I mean, any black woman or any woman any woman wants a black man. Do you know what I mean? But then in terms of black women, they prefer to go for the lighter skinned woman, if that makes sense. And you see that in like advertising, like the amount of adverts you see on TV, you see like a mixed race girl with a black man or a white man, but then you will see like a dark skinned woman in maybe like the makeup ads, just to make up you know how Fenty, they've got like a whole range of makeup now.
Yeah.
So that they do relevant. Yeah. So in order to be relevant, you'll see the black women on there, but you won't see them selling car insurance. Does that make sense?
Ah, okay. Interesting. Yeah. That's a very interesting point. Cool. I'm glad you touched on oh my gosh, you just exited my brain. But you touched on something that we'll bring back up. Kelly, how about yourself?
So obviously my skin tone is lighter. So when you're doing this paperback, I would fall in front and of everyone. I have never experienced, obviously I've grown up in the Caribbean, I'm Jamaican. I've never experienced colorism like that in Jamaica. I've seen where with the arguments and you tend to go for the features.
Yeah.
Also, but I've never experienced it like that. However, I must say, at work, answering your question for work, I'm a black girl. I'm not a part of the crowd. I'm like the sore thumb out of everyone else. I'm the only black person in the crowd. So I feel a little bit weird at work knowing that is the situation. And I wouldn't say it would be a colorism. It wouldn't be colorism. It was more of a race.
Right, yeah. With colorism, it's much more like within our own community. So have you seen that like towards guys in probably you haven't at all, and that's fine.
No, in terms when it comes on to guys, I mean, I like all guys. I wouldn't say all guys. because I don't think I would necessarily go for. I would never date a white guy. I just couldn't.
I don't know why I laughed.
I couldn't.
Why?
I couldn't do
Why?
I don't know. And the thing is, I have no idea why I wouldn't. I've had white friends, but I would just not date. I think we wouldn't have anything in common. And it's because I have white friends. This is why I know we wouldn't have anything in common. So yeah.
Can I just say I would date a white woman if anyone's got that?
Thank you.
Good for you, Chris.
Thank
Good for
you.
you.
Jeez, this guy always.
Sure, I think it is. So to answer like the question you asked me before, the reason why I'm saying that as well. So I think like it's okay to have preferences. I think sometimes people, when you talk about colorism, like you can't have a preference. You can have a preference. I think it's when you create an environment that makes one skin tone or one skin tone much more preferable, more superior than the other one. That's where the issue comes up. So like I can have a preference for like white chicks as an example. But if I'm then talking down like black women or darker skinned Indians or darker skinned black women, and that's an issue within myself as well. Do you get what I mean? So like it's okay for people to have their preferences. So I don't think that's necessarily like a colorism thing. It's much more the negative influence. So
I feel like the word preference is the issue. Like for me anyway, like preference is whether do I like chicken or fish. It's more for me. It's more about attraction. In that sense, am I attracted to darker skinned guys? Am I attracted to black guys in general? Am I attracted to lighter skinned guys? So I feel like when we do talk about stuff like this, making it sound like when you say preference, it's like this is a choice. I am deciding that okay, I want to date this particular hue of black people, and then I think that's where the issue is, rather than it being more based on attraction of
Wouldn't you say
what?
You're attracted to your preference?
What?
Wouldn't you say you're attracted to your preference?
No.
No. So,
No, because you're...
Go on. Because I'm just saying that probably you prefer these type of, I don't want to say these type of people. Sorry. Probably you prefer to date a lighter skin or a darker skin person because you're more attracted to a lighter skin or a darker skin person.
But I wouldn't. I just feel like I wouldn't call that a preference in that sense. For me, I wouldn't. For me, that's just a choice, isn't it?
So
whereas attraction is an attraction. That's what you're drawn to. If that's what you're drawn to, then that's what you're drawn to.
Well, so you're drawn to the chicken is not your preference?
I am drawn to the chicken, yes.
You prefer the chicken over the fish?
Yeah.
So you're attracted to this.
I'm attracted to the chicken, not the fish.
For the chicken,
No. Don't mix it up. You prefer. Even me. I prefer vegan meals that are familiar to me than vegan meals that are not familiar to me. But it doesn't mean I'm attracted to vegan meals. It's just I prefer one food over one. But if I'm attracted,
I don't know what you just said. I don't know what you're getting.
Attraction and preference is still different.
I don't think attraction and preference is that different.
I think it is.
I think it is.
What do you think, Isaac? One?
No, I actually do think attraction and preference is different. I don't think there is a problem with having a preference, though. I don't think there's a problem with having a preference. Personally, like I mentioned the last time, I am more drawn to darker skin women. It's just how I've always been. I find them more attractive, right? But that doesn't mean that I wouldn't date lighter skinned women. I have done. I mentioned that last time as well. I have done. Yeah. Right. I think the issue is going back to your question, Akil, about when it comes to the men side of it for the women, and vice versa, even for us as men for women who we might be drawn to. I think the issue with colorism isn't having a preference of lighter against darker. It's looking down on it. It's a negative connotation that is associated with it. So yeah. even if I preferred lighter skinned women over darker skinned women, there's no issue there. But if I then look at the darker skinned women as if to say they're not as good as, or they're not equal to, that's the issue with colorism. Having a preference is not an issue. You can like Kelly said, she can't picture herself dating a white guy. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing whatsoever. But does she look down on white people as if to say they're lower than us? That's an issue she did. And because she doesn't, there's nothing wrong with that, right? I know for a fact, right, for me personally, I cannot see myself marrying a white person as well. Mm-hmm. Why? Because Kelly mentioned as well, for me, there's too much of a culture difference. Right? Yeah. There's nothing wrong with white people. I love people, right? I'm a loving guy, right? I'm a loving guy. I love people. I don't really care where you're from. I'll accept you for who you are, but who do I connect with? Who do I naturally connect with? Who have I got more familiar traits with and characteristics with? Right. Who can I understand? Who could understand me, right? So there's all of these factors that come into play. Does that mean that they're racist because they won't date a black person? No. Does it mean I'm racist because I won't date a white person? No. But I have a preference. Who am I attracted to as well? So yeah, like, I don't think there's an issue with having a preference, personally. I don't. And yeah, you are attracted to people for a whole host of things. A lot of the time, it is your upbringing, it is your culture, it is what you're experiencing when you're growing up. You know, certain things. But yeah, so that's just me.
I think that's a brilliant way to summarize that and even explain attraction and preference, which is an interesting debate within itself. With Marissa, how about yourself? So, growing up, because you grew up in the Caribbean as well. Well, you grew up between here and the Caribbean. Not to give out your whole autobiography, sorry, but have you seen colorism growing up towards men, as in preference of lighter skinned men, or?
I think similar to Eleanor, I'd have to think back to like high school. So for those who don't know, I was born in the UK and my parents moved to Trinidad and Tobago, and I was there for like 11 years until I returned to the UK. Cool. History out of the way. Being in high school, there was that era where, you know, light-skinned guys were cool and that's what everyone was going for. But I think within my peer group, we were all of various hues, and it was never really about, oh, I'm actively going for the light-skinned person, or I'm actively going for a dark-skinned person. It was more about who you were attracted to in that sense, because in the Caribbean, you see so many, we're all black, you know, and we all look, we just see each other as black people. We don't necessarily see, well, for me anyway, I didn't necessarily see, oh, light skin, darker skin, or in between. Like, it was just kind of like, it was more against, oh, he's a nice guy for this particular reason, or she's a nice girl for this particular reason. So like going to school, I never really saw it. However, from within family, yes. And I think it goes back to what Christopher was saying about the conditioning, in the sense where, you know, you might hear an uncle or an auntie say, oh, well, you know, look at your lip big, you know, or, you know, you got the rubber lips, or, you know, all this type of stuff. And it would just literally be like, oh, don't do that because, you know, the boys aren't going to like you because you look too big, or, you know, this, that, and everything else. And you'd get that within your family. But I think because it was family, and it never, as much as it came across negatively, it never really affected you as such, because it was almost indirect, kind of. Mm-hmm. So, like, it was there, but it was never really an issue as such, because, you know, it was just a condition and you heard it all the time. So it just felt normal. So, yeah.
That's interesting. So have you ever felt, I think it became, we keep coming up on this question. Have you ever felt the need to challenge that whenever you heard that, or did you just brush it off as a joke?
As a teenager, I just brushed it off. Mm. Like, it was literally just water off my back, essentially, because I heard it so many times, or I heard it directly to like a cousin or whoever else, that it just seemed like, so it seemed so normal. So it's like only now, as an adult, and you realize that, okay, this is actually an issue within our community, then you think back and it's like, oh wow, you can see it appear in all these different little situations that you realize that, wow, that wasn't right. And then you see how, where I am now, I don't have kids, but because I'm aware of it now, when I do have kids, I know not to make those same type of comments, as much as it may have seemed normal to me back then, I know in a time now and in the future, it's something that I have to actively be aware of the things that I say and what I mean when I say things to people, not only just to people, but to like my kids coming up, because it's something that will affect them more than it affected me then.
Right. Interesting. We touched on this quite a few times, a bit in different people's points about, Isaac mentioned earlier, that the colorism issue is much more, I guess it's much more prominent or on a wider scale when it comes to colorism towards women, Black women. And Eleanor raised a really interesting point when she said you will see, they use Black women to advertise makeup, right? Or fashion sometimes, but you never see them advertising insurance or advertising, mortgages or anything of any other nature. So now I'm thinking that the media, and which is something that Aishanki touched on earlier, the media's use of Black women, dark-skinned women especially, versus light-skinned women, do you think that has a part to play, that as well as just colorism in social settings, does that have a part to play in why statistically Black women marry less? Do you think that colorism feeds people's choices in who they marry, as Black men? Do we marry darker skinned women less because of that perception? Is there any particular reason to blame or use? What would you say, Chris?
Yeah, so like just to bring this back into like the Christian discussion, right? So like the popular phrase is, one of the devil's greatest trick is to convince people he never existed. So we've been conned like for a long time. So if you look at what's the movie Straight Outta Compton? So they were talking about like the casting thing. So for a Black movie, even they wanted that lighter skinned Black women in there.
Mm.
So it cons you to think that, we have a Black film and we have Black representation, but actually the representation isn't necessarily reflective of Blackness. It's a particular skin tone. So that idea breeds self-hatred. So if you are too dark, you're too dark, you should be lighter, right? So if you look at Christian principles, what's God described as biblically? He's described as love, right? And in Matthew 12:31, they were talking about what's the greatest commandment. He said, well, love God and love your neighbors and love yourself. But how can you then love someone else if you don't love yourself, right? So there's a devil's trick about self-hatred. So the kind of getting to that point is, from a social perspective, being aware that these things happen. Actually, from a Christian perspective, is realizing that there's also a spiritual thing. So if you then have a relationship with who God is, and then you know that you're created out of God's image, guess what? You love yourself irrespective of what other people say about your skin tone, about the size of your lips, your nose, etc. So then you're able to then love other people, which means as a Black man, what typically accused of, we would also love our darker skinned women, right? And vice versa, whatever the case is. So by I think as a Christian, there's a higher expectation for us because we understand who God is and we understand that God is love and we understand we're made in his image. So the idea of colorism should never seep into Christians, right? It just shouldn't. Mm. But if we've been conned for such a long time, that's again is part of like the enemy's tricks. So I think it's not just a social issue. That's my point. Like it's a point about it's a spiritual thing as well. So as Christians, how do we overcome that? And then it seeps into all these different statistics as well.
So would you say that there is a way we can actively make sure that we don't feed into that?
So there's practical stuff that you can do. So like when we talk about the media, we give it credence by saying the media, but we mean Western media. There's other media out there. Mm. There's other media you can check out that promotes a diversity of people. Or just like educate yourself. So the conversations that we're having here, so doing stuff practical, doing some more reading, watching more videos, etc. and looking behind the scenes and seeing how these things work. But from a spiritual perspective, I think you also need to understand your Bible. And that's why, like, the Bible is very practical for every walk of life. And I think sometimes as Christians, what we've done is we talk about stuff that's very up in the clouds, but we don't relate to the stuff that's down here. But if you look at that text, you can apply it to colorism, right? It's a simple text about loving God and loving your neighbors. So it's the idea, like, how can I love my neighbor if I don't love myself? And then how do you love your neighbor? But it's understanding that if you love God, and all these things trickle down, and it kind of waters away or pushes away these ideas of, like, racism, pushes away these ideas of colorism. So it is a Christian battle as well. That I was going to say. So I think it's like a two-pronged approach.
No, Aishan, do you have any thoughts? No.
Well, I totally agree with what Chris says. I think the challenge always comes as it's the information that we've been given. I think that's the wider challenge. It isn't necessarily just spirituality. I think it's like Marissa's mentioned, it's so normal and it's so normalized that people flip it on automatic. And as a Christian, you know what is right and you know what you should be doing, but then there's also culture that clashes with that, like without you even knowing. And again, it goes back, the whole colorism thing, it goes back, again, it all stems back. You said it's understanding who you are in God. And that's so valid. Like, if you don't love yourself, and that's such a clever way of doing it. If you don't love yourself, you can't love others. So if you don't love your features, you don't love your I don't know, your lips, your nose, your eyes, really and truly, anyone that looks like that, they're getting cussed or like they're getting put down. So that makes so much sense. And I never thought of it like that before. I think that the other side of it is we as Black people practice it. I believe we practice colorism a lot more. And due to no fault of our own, but also not being aware of how it's working against us, as Chris says. But I think it is the key is literally education on so many different levels. And I think it's mainly for the wider community also, because I'm not thinking of me like who I know, like, you know, this is demonization of, you know, the slave person in the house. If you're white, you're all right. If you're brown, stick around. If you're Black, get back. That was the slave kind of thing that was happening. So that's the mentality that from the slave owners that the media is now taken and put in place. And then now we've taken it in our houses and we've taken it into our mentality. So I think it is hugely important that we have education. I don't know how practically we can get to everyone, but I think the importance is self-awareness, awareness of self on a level where you realize that your features are fine and God created them just the way they are.
Kelly, any points you want to add? No?
I was just going to say it's kind of the reverse to the point that Aishanki made, is in the sense that it's something it's cyclical in the sense your parents learned it from their parents, who learned it from their parents, who learned it from the parents before that, who was probably in slavery, who heard it all the time. And then obviously it's because it's a whole generational thing. It seems like the media is actually doing this, but it's not the media. It's literally us, because it's what we've learned from all those years coming right down into generation to generation. And so with the point in terms of God, he made us in his likeness. So if we know this, if we study our Bibles, as was mentioned before, we'll realize that God is all of these colors, that's God. And so whether your nose broad, your lip big, whatever, it's beautiful in his sight. He made it. So it's more of, you know, us educating ourselves and not necessarily blaming others, but more like, you know what, this is the narrative. We need to shift this narrative. We need to recognize now that we're wrestling with not with flesh and blood, but this is a devil's plot or ploy to get us to fight against each other. Because that's what's happening at the moment. We're fighting against each other and putting each other down. We have low self-esteem. So it's more like for us to just be aware of this and educate others whilst we're educating ourselves as to how we should live in this world.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with that. And I think to add to that, the reason I mentioned the media is that when you have young Black guys in particular, you get to a certain age and you don't listen to your parents anymore. you listen to your friends, you listen to society. When you go to school, you spend more time at school than you do with your parents. So a lot of the time, the information that you distill in your child, if it's not supported in the environments that they go in, is going to be challenging. And they're going to hear a lot of those cusses. They're going to hear a lot of those insults and whatever else ideas are coming from other places. That's not going to be, you're okay. So I think it's definitely a lot of work to be done as a family. And again, like it comes back to like broken family units as well, where you have just a mom trying to raise her son and stuff like that. That affects because dad's not around. Like there's so many things that knocks on. So as long as I totally think it can be done. I definitely think it can be done. And I think it is something that as long as you're aware of it, you can challenge it. Because then you can be like, yo, I'm not letting my kids watch BBC, or I'm not letting not saying the BBC, but I'm not letting my kids, like, what was it the other day? I think I saw a meme or something. Someone's child was up watching YouTube, and it was simple as the dark fairy is not allowed to come to the ball, for example, because she's evil and she's mean. And this kid's like 2. And it was like, the lady woke up and she was like, what? Did I just hear that? And when she replayed it, it was just that idea that dark skin is wrong on a 2-year-old YouTube channel. So as much as I do agree with the notion of family and we can educate, we can also do more on the sense of safeguarding. And that's definitely important.
Yeah, I just got one point. I remembered with the whole Black Lives Matter movement and everything, there was this one sermon that was done by Ivor Myers. I think it's the hidden agenda behind racism. Yes. And it was an amazing sermon, and it kind of pretty much covers colorism within that as well. And
what's the title of that again? Do you know?
Pardon?
What's the title of that again? The
Hidden Agenda Behind Racism by Ivor Myers. I'll put the link out there so you're aware. But the way he broke it down, it was so amazing. And I guess like the main points that I kind of gathered from it, especially in the context of colorism and racism, was that we were all of us, mankind was made in the image of God, right? And in his likeness. So you get that from Genesis 1. So literally, we are all, every single race, all of us are made in the image of God, right? So we all look like him. And then even like further evidence, if you have a look in Ezekiel 1, verse 28, it describes what God looks like. And it says that God looks like a rainbow. So literally, every kind of color person, we all look like God as well. So it doesn't matter, like God didn't make black people and then white people and then Asians and then Indians and then, do you know what I mean? God just made man. And then according to wherever we lived in the earth or close to the equator, we all came out different colors, do you know what I mean? According to adaptation. And then, so literally God just made us all, we're all equal. And if we, as Chris and I can't remember who else was saying, if we can't love ourselves, then we don't love God as well. Do you get what I mean? If we hate ourselves, how can we love God? Because, you know what I mean? How can we love something that we have not seen if we can't love what's already in front of us? Do you know what I mean? So the whole kind of crux of the matter was in the sermon was like, if we can't love each other, if we can't love all races, then we automatically hate God because we're all made in his image and his likeness. So the whole idea is, it's not even the races, it's literally the great controversy in short. Like, if we can't love each other, we're all against God, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'll send the link because I'm not doing it the greatest justice, but it's an amazing sermon and he breaks it down.
Yeah, Akil and Eleanor, I've listened to Ivor Myers. I've listened to his sermon on that as well. It is very powerful, and you're actually doing it good justice. Actually, I'm sitting here nodding along to everything you're saying because I remember it. I was listening to it last week actually, and it's a powerful sermon. So yeah, those who haven't heard it, I would definitely advise you.
Anything in particular you took away from that sermon?
No, everything that Eleanor's already mentioned, and also the fact of like God is just an array of colors, like the rainbow. He is literally every color. Like that. When you looked up upon God, you saw him as a fiery, burning flame, and then around that was the rainbow. that is what God is. That's the light of God. Like, and it's just an array of colors. And yet, like, to be fair, because I watched it like a week and a half ago, now what Eleanor's saying is coming back to me. I'm like, yes, 100%. Don't sermon. But I took away things 100%. But to remember it right now, I can't like relay it back. So she done a great job. What I would also say is regarding colorism is ultimately it boils down to one factor for me. Like, I think Chris has spoken about it. Ashanki spoke about it as well. But I think before we even start talking about the media, like, and we start searching ourselves about how do I love myself, we've got to strip away self, because it's trauma. It is trauma that we have got from generations back. Like Kelly was mentioning, our fathers, their fathers, it's generation of trauma. And ultimately, even though we did not, literally, us lot here did not experience it back in slavery, literally, but it's that trauma that's just gone on through the generation and gone on, and it just keeps getting passed down. So we have to, like Shanky said, we have to break the narrative. We've got to be the people that speak onto our kids, and we've got to educate our kids, and we've got to be very attentive in what we allow them to watch, what we allow them to gain knowledge of. Remember, listen, I can't say this enough. In life, there's two ways of gaining experiences, right? You can either be the teacher or the taught, right? And ultimately, if you're not going to be willing as that parent to say to your children, this is what it is, and try and educate your child, they will be educated by society. It is that simple. So it's either we break the narrative and we become the educators, or we allow society to educate them. And like, it's all good and well us lot being like, as grown adults saying, do you know what, I'm going to break the narrative as a grown adult. But there's many adults that cannot. Like I said, my ex's family, they're adults, and they treated me like I was lesser than. But they're adults. So it's not everyone that's of an adult nature that's going to be able to say, all right, cool, I'm going to break the narrative. No, many will conform. Is it their fault? Maybe. Ultimately, what does it boil down to? Again, that trauma, they don't even know that they're even experiencing. They cannot see the wrong in it, right? They cannot even see that it is something wrong. They cannot, like, when I was being spoken to the way I was spoken to about it, it was almost as though, how can you not get what I'm trying to say, Isaac? And I was like, what? Like, are you being serious? Like, you're talking to me like I'm the one who's like lost. Like, listen to what you're saying. And then I had to sit back and be like, actually, it's just the trauma. It's the trauma that she's got. It's the trauma that she's been instilled with. And that's, for me, that's what it boils down to. But yeah, it's trauma.
Can I just add a kill? So like within the Christian context, so like, I actually want to check out that sermon. So the idea of who God is. So if you look at what's come out of like the Black Lives Matter movement and colorism, etc., it's like a controversial topic about white Jesus. Right? So people are now saying, you know, they've taken down the statue, so do you take down like the white Jesus? Which we went witnessing in Brixton once, and this guy was like, you know, I'll never be Christian because, you know, Jesus is white. And I dismissed it because I was like, that's like, color's not an issue, like, do you know, within the Christian realm. But actually, I get what he was saying, but I still hold on to my point before. It's not an issue. So like people say, like, take it down. All right, you take it down, you replace it with what? Because like you said, God is a God of all colors, right? So like we're trying to limit him to being white, to being black, etc. But like God is greater than that. So yes, it has been used. So obviously in colonialism to it's been used essentially to get slaves, right, and to control people, and having that image that the whiteness is the savior, and like, you know, darkness and they associate darkness with like being black. So like even last week, we were talking about Ham and his associates being in Africa, and they used that to try to say, well, that's where evil came from, and that's how, you know, darkness and black people associated with a lesser than the white thing. But if you look at, I think from a spiritual perspective, and this is how clever God is as well. So like, what's the second commandment says what? Thou shalt not make any graven images or likeness in heaven or above, So like God foresaw all these things coming, and he was like, don't limit me to a color, to a thing, to an image. So like our church doesn't have that. So we don't accept when people are doing sermons and have white Jesus. You don't see any like, no one's carrying any pendants of what Jesus looks like. Do you get what I mean? There's no like statues in the corners unless you're in a former Catholic church like we are, right? But you know, like, so these things aren't an issue within and as part of the Adventist message as well. So actually, sometimes it's making our faith and the Adventist message practical. So when God says, "Don't limit me," that's what He's saying. Don't limit me to an image, because these are the issues that will be caused further down the line. So the idea of like a white Jesus, yeah, you know, change him, take him down, wherever the case is. Actually, don't change him, just take him down, because God said, don't do that to me. I'm bigger than that. So I think as Christians, if we start seeing God for truly who He is, and then making this Bible practical, it exists in every walk of life. You can find a text that can kind of guide and protect us, and I can answer people who say there shouldn't be a white Jesus. Yeah, you're right, there shouldn't. Like, he's of all colors. Like, don't limit him. There shouldn't be an image at all. So I think it delves further into what Isaac is saying, is us as individuals, like, educating ourselves, and we can educate ourselves through all these books that people written through history, through facts. But the greatest educator is the Bible and our Christian faith.
So hold on.
Sorry, Chris. Sorry. Can I just get clarification? Were you saying that? Did you say something about Ham?
Yeah, so last week, hold on, let me try and find this. So we were trying to, like, looking at the idea where, so some of Ham's descendants, Cush and Put, for example, settled in Africa, present-day Ethiopia and Libya. So people were misguided and said because Cush and Put spread their black skin throughout Africa, they concluded black Africans are a cursed race, therefore inferior to white races.
Right. Because I was looking at that myself, because in terms of like looking at Zipporah, because she was associated with being darker skin, or I don't know, because of the whole Kush thing and where they settled in Africa. But then I actually started looking at like what who Kush was. He was the son of Ham, so he was cursed. And you know how like Miriam and Aaron had an issue with Zipporah being Moses' wife, and then Miriam got leprosy as a result and stuff like that. So I'm just thinking, was it an issue of her being black, or was it an issue of her being a descendant of a cursed people? So that's my, just the epiphany.
I think a lot of us know a lot of these different points, right, that help us to be more educated and carry ourselves better when dealing with racism or colorism. But I feel like, anyway, and this is getting into a personal space, and just, I mean, let me know your own opinions on this. I feel like the church stops when it comes to the discussion of racism or colorism. It's like, I don't know, I just feel like the topics that are chosen for sermons and stuff, they probably don't touch enough on racism and colorism and how people who are black and are darker skinned more likely be subject to things like poverty, things like they'll be more likely to get arrested. The black children are more likely to be kicked out or suspended from school. Do you guys feel like these things should be touched on from church, from our perspective, or do you think that it really is about just our conversation here as friends, as people?
Of course they should be touched on by the church. Jesus even talks about what's done to the lesser than, those that are lesser than. If we leave out those that are lesser than, that's what we're doing onto him. So from a biblical aspect, again, we 100% need to work on reaching out those that are oppressed, for sure. Like, and does the church avoid this? Yes, the church does. I was in a discussion about why do particular preachers or pastors avoid these things, and respect to the answer that was given, because it was an honest answer, and the answer was pretty much because we're taught to. Now that's a deep thing. But we are like, but that is, and I respected the answer that was given, but I can't respect the fact that that is what is taught. Like for me, like irrespective of what I'm taught to do, right? When I'm at work, and I'm taught to do a certain thing, if it goes against my morals, my values, if it goes against, or there's going to be some harm done to the kids, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Like, for me, I couldn't do it. If I was to become a pastor and I'm taught to do a particular thing, I mean, I'd be the black sheep because I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Like, straight up, I would, all these controversial and taboo topics that the church loves to avoid, or it almost seems as though it's a sin to speak about these topics.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what? Like, how many times have we sat down and heard a sermon about, I don't know, that David and Goliath, for instance? How many times are you gonna, unless you're relating that to current times, like what is the Goliath now? The Goliath now could be oppression. Cool, make it relatable. But if you just sit me down and talk to me about David and Goliath and how great and brave David was, I mean, that goes over my head. Like, I'm not interested in that. I'm not being disrespectful. Like, I'm just not interested in that because I know the story, and it's not like I'm saying I know it all, I know everything. But I mean, make it relatable. Currently, make it relatable. Goliath could be oppression, racism in the church, colorism, like we're talking about. And not only in the church, but in the community, the wider community, like Chris keeps going back to, and he keeps trying to drill in. Where is the love in this? Where is the love? We're catering to our own, but do we necessarily not need to cater to the world? Of course we do. Why are we not catering to them? Why are we not going out there? You know? So, yes, Akil, the church definitely, for me personally, and when I say the church, like, obviously we make up the church, right? We make up the church.
Yeah.
So I'm not negating that we've got a job to do as well. No, we 100% have a job to do as well. What I am saying is, as well as us who aren't afraid to put on these shows like Brixton, you lot are doing a great thing. You're making a change, as small as it may be to some in the grand scheme of things. It is massive. Even to me, a believer, I've said to Chris a number of times how much I appreciate FNL. 100%. I think you lot have got a great movement. This is something. We cannot reach everybody, but if we reach even one, there's rejoicing upstairs. Facts. So my thing is, if you're in a position of power, if you're a preacher, if you've got a great following on social media, if you do this, like I'm on a number of various platforms where I speak up, or we speak up. A lot of them are Christian platforms and some of them aren't Christian platforms. And we speak up against these topics, you know, and we highlight them. Do as you can do, as best as you can do, you know. Don't wait for the pastors. Don't wait for the preachers. Don't wait for the people that have got the mouths. You do your part as well. Even if it's a small thing, it's better than nothing. So yes, bro, I 100% think the church can do more. The church, when I keep relating back to the church, by the way, I am targeting those in the higher positions. I am 100% calling out the pastors, those above the pastors. 100%, the conference. Yes, I am 100%.
I hear that. Shanky, did you want to add something?
Sorry, I got like slightly sidetracked. No, I totally understand. I think what I wanted to add was on Chris's point about, you know, it doesn't matter what color Jesus is. If it doesn't matter, why did they change it? Or why is he white? Or why is he portrayed as white, so to speak? That would be my question on that part. I think for the most part of colorism and you guys have touched on, like God's, and Isaac, you mentioned that lesser than, like there's no lesser than. When you say like stuff like, you know, God says look out for the lesser than, we're not lesser than people because we're dark. Or even like the whole idea of like Shem, Hem, and like all these narratives, even like when we think about the Bible itself, and like Jesus had to hide in Egypt, for example. This is just like me asking a question. Jesus had to hide in Egypt when Mary gave birth. Was he blonde hair and blue-eyed at that point? And if so, could he have hidden in Egypt? That's a question. And there's so many disparities. I feel like the narrative of Christianity that we have isn't the full picture, as in like there's been a lot of whitewashing happening, guys, and on not just on from like recent history I'm talking about. So I feel like a lot of these things there was probably hardly any like blonde hair, blue-eyed white people in the Bible because of geographic location, because of time, because of so many factors. But the idea that we have is a painting. And Chris, you rightly mentioned that God says, don't have any idols. So I'm totally for that. I'm like, if he ain't white, we need to take him down. If he's white, we still need to take him down because the Bible said you shouldn't have any idols. And it was used as a tool for demonizing. And again, it comes back to colorism because he's white and blue-eyed. You want to be like your savior. You want to be like the greatest. So naturally, anything to get you like that, you're going to try and do. And that goes in the form of bleaching. That goes in the form of, whatever you need to do. So I definitely think from a spiritual perspective, I know God don't see us any different. The challenge that we have is that the person who won the last war is telling us the story, right? And they're telling us their version of the story. Like, yeah, there was this great king. He was white. Of course, he won the war. He was white. So therefore, that's all we're dealing with. We're just dealing with the residue of someone that's won a war or won a form of a war. So that's why we're struggling with the ideas of, colorism. And I hope, God willing, we're at the end of it. But like, I definitely do believe that it definitely has a lot to do with, again, self-acceptance and knowing what the system was set up to do and knowing where it's coming from. Because once you know where it's coming from, like, they were like, for example, I think there's another one is like the American, whatever it's called, the speech they gave, Emancipation
Proclamation.
Like, every man is equal and stuff. They weren't thinking of slaves because that wasn't what they weren't thinking. Oh, we're going to get you as slaves one day, and we're going to save up some inheritance so when our slaves get free, like, they can have their own lives. No, they weren't thinking that. So there's certain systems that are in place that weren't meant for us, and we have to be real with that. And even like church and stuff like that, there are things that are practiced in church it wasn't set up for that, guys. And we just have to be real and say, as much as we want to be for like God as a whole, the structures in place, they weren't set up to accommodate us. And I totally, I'm with you, Chris. Like, it is literally, God doesn't have an image in a sense that have no idols, accept everyone as they are. Like, I'm all for that. And I think it definitely boils back down to like a lot of education and just understanding why these things are happening, because it's spiritual warfare. Because if you think about the people that in the Bible that are most oppressed, it's usually God's people. Like, if you think about it, like the Israelites, 400 years in Egypt, same story. So I don't believe that God hates us. I don't believe we're less than or anything like that. I definitely believe that our ideas of ourselves and how we see ourselves has to definitely come directly from the source, where he says, I made you in my image. You're beautifully and wonderfully made, fearfully and wonderfully made, and so on.
Nice.
Sure. Just to the point.
Oh,
jump. Just a quick point. Just to the point, like Shanky's making, I think, is he asked to kill, like, how can we overcome this? I think it's asking ourselves like the hard questions and being honest. But I think also, secondly, like knowing who the true enemy is. And I think sometimes that's what prevents people from asking those questions, isn't it? You'll offend people. So even stuff like you mentioned, like the way we worship, as an example, it's very much leans towards a Western white style of worship,
right,
rather than like the rest of the world, and that's kind of deemed as like the only way to do it. But it's not, right? But if you dig yourself deeper into understanding who God is and understanding what the Bible is, then you start asking these questions, and it's not to offend any other race, it's not to offend ourselves, but it's actually for all of us to realize that it's the trick of the enemy to get us to fight each other, whether within the same community or out of that community. So it's even the idea of like having the white Jesus argument. So how can we change that narrative? Maybe start putting up the white Jesus in your presentations, right? And just put Jesus as a text, right? That might help, not push things forward. Like, it's a very small thing, but I think things like that where kids are brought up, we all have these little stories as kids. And if you see the same image, what do you start thinking? But like I'm saying, I still remember the books I had as a kid. It was black kids that I saw. So automatically, when I saw like white kids, I was like, oh, cool. So they exist as well, right? So I saw these two different things. But if all you ever see is that, then you just never know anything bigger. So I think like for us as Christians, there's nothing wrong with asking hard questions and actually admitting that we don't have the answers altogether, because God promises us that He give us all the answers, and we're not necessarily ready for it. But I think to shy away from it, it's what Isaac was saying, is what people taught to do. But actually, we should be doing what Shanky's saying. say your truth and then let's educate ourselves and see if we can move forward, but also be wary that we need to then focus on the spiritual aspect as well and not leave that part out.
Yeah, Isaac, you wanted to touch on something?
Yeah, thanks, Shanky, for correcting something that I said. When I said lesser than, what I meant to say is, Jesus actually says, truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me. So what I'm talking about is the oppressed, the poor, the sick. That's what I mean. So the church is ignoring those people. The church is doing that, ignoring those. So I'm not saying black people are lesser than. What I'm saying is, if the church is doing it to the least of these, then we're doing it to God. We're doing it to Jesus. Does that make more sense now, Shank? All right, cool.
Cool. Chris, you want to lead us into the wrap up? Or you want me to do it?
Sorry, say that again.
You want to lead us into the wrap up?
Yeah, I can do. So, hold on, let me get the text out.
So 1 second, before we go into the wrap up, can I just bring in some of the comments online?
Oh, yeah. I forgot what online.
No,
Yeah, so we got a couple. So we got one from Heather Hutchinson. She says, God is a God of variety. We all meet him at the foot of the cross, and the blood covers us all. Simone Edwards says, break the narrative. Yes, I've been waiting to hear this point. It's great to hear. So I think that was Isaac's point. And we teach our children, and they sometimes listen to others. However, when we do our part, we allow God to do the rest. So that's in terms of teaching our kids about what is right, or not pointing them towards the colorism aspects as well. And there's kind of like someone's account of where racism is real. So a young dark-skinned black man from Jamaica was on a work program in the US, and they had found a church not far from where he was staying. When he got there, he was told that he was at the wrong church. There were all white Seventh-day Adventists. And the question is, what I want to know is if there'll be a white section and a black section in heaven. Yeah. So basically, because it's like, how are you going to tell this person this is the wrong church to be at? So, yeah.
Where was that?
This was in the US.
There won't be a white and black section. There'll be hymns and like modern worship songs, though.
I feel like, and this is so interesting to me. Like when I found out there's actually white churches and stuff, and I understand like if a church is like white by the demographic, like they haven't chosen to be. It's just like that's their closest church, and that's their area. But like that's an interesting one, and yeah, I think as you rightly said, Eleanor, if you can't love each other, that means we're not loving God to some extent. So I think that's not in our position to say who's going anywhere or anything, but it just makes sense. Like your neighbors, you love yourself, and if you can't do that, then
yeah, that's crazy to say. As well as Eleanor, one of the comments you mentioned was about steering the kids to or not letting them, I guess, idolize a certain image as Jesus. Just something to that effect.
No, it's just saying that we teach our children, and they sometimes listen to others. However, when we do our part, we allow God to do the rest. So basically, us as parents have to teach them what is right and not what is steered by what is out there in the media. And then we allow God to do the rest. We can only do our best. Do you know what I mean? But then we have to allow God to do the rest because we don't know everything. I think that's what their point was trying to say.
Yeah, because that kind of triggered a thought, a memory. Even one of my grandmas, they have a Jesus calendar, and the Jesus on the calendar, listen, this man was white as snow with pink lips. I'm like, who's this brother? And this is in the middle of the ghetto in Jamaica, and this white brother on the wall. I was like, so you know, and I love it. She loved this calendar. If this calendar ever crooked, hold on, fix it. So that just came to mind that we definitely do need to break that narrative for sure. And as Chris rightfully said, not have any image of Jesus, because what is an image of Jesus Christ? Do you know what I mean? But yeah, Chris, wrap us up.
Cool. Yeah, I just wanted to take it to these Bible verses. So I think it's like an interesting link to this as well. So it's Matthew 25, 35 to 40. So as we're ampling towards Sabbath, you can tell me amen when you found it. And please stand as well if you can. So that's Matthew 25, 35 to 40.
Yeah.
So I'll read the whole text and I kind of explain what the rationale is, I think. It says, "For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me." The righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry, feed you, and thirsty, and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" The king replied, "Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for me, one of these, least of my brothers and sisters. So truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." So when we were talking about this, so like it's a text where Jesus is telling, essentially like giving an example of what true Christianity is. So people like to say is that practical Christianity, but practical Christianity is Christianity, right? And he was saying like, it links the point about what Ashanki was talking about, where he's telling us to focus on people who are needy, right? Who are hungry and to give them food, who are thirsty and to give them water, who are imprisoned and we free them. I think sometimes as a church, we use that as a narrative, and rightly so, to talk about, caring for other people. My question is always, when we're looking at that colorism, so who are the people that are currently being oppressed? So we looked at the stats. The people likely to be incarcerated tend to be people who are black but of a darker skin tone, which I think is even deeper. The people who are likely to be expelled from school tend to be people with a darker hue skin tone. The people who are likely to be paid less at work tend to be people who have a darker skin tone. The people least likely to rise amongst the ladder in their workplace, which means it affects them economically, tend to be people with a darker skin tone. So then that links to like the level of the economic status. So least of people being more poor, least of people being more incarcerated. So when we're asking ourselves, like, we read this text and then we say, who are we supposed to go after? Then it just shows we're supposed to help those people who are in current need. And then within our own demographic, as though people tend to be of a darker hue, then actually what the Bible's telling us to do is we then need to shift our focus and help those people out. It's not saying don't help everyone else out. It's saying like, who's your current demographic audience that you need to assist? Who are the people that are currently being oppressed at the moment? That's what the Black Lives Matter movement's about. So it's a Christian principle. So like when I think people kind of get bogged down and say, why are you talking about this, heading towards Sabbath? You're talking about social issues, etc. But social issues are things that Jesus cared about. And he is literally telling us that the people who will make it to the kingdom are going to be people who realize they're people who have been oppressed and help them out. But in order for us to help them out, we then need to know who those people are. And the way you know who those people are is by looking at having these conversations and looking at the statistics don't lie. It is telling you that people of a darker hue have been made to, what Ashanki was saying is like the lighter hue is kind of the savior, whereas the darker hue is, evil. And they try and make that about a race thing. But if you look at the points that Enon and Isaac are raising about God being limitless and God being of all colors, actually, if we focus on God, we begin to see that about each other. We begin to love each other as much as we love him as well. So it's all in the Bible. The Bible's so practical if we just break it down and like pay attention, and it links to every social issue. So it links to like this topic as well. So it's not just a social issue. It's not just a Christian issue, but it's also like a spiritual battle as well. That was it.
Okay. I was lost and I was still soaking in. This has been hefty, man, but necessary for sure. Because I always felt like, as I said earlier, I've just never seen this issue discussed in the church. And Chris said it as well on another live, was like, the world will be falling to pieces, but in church we're talking about David and Goliath, as Isaac said. So I just want to thank you guys for joining us. I thank the panel for coming through. Yeah. We'll say our closing prayer. Eleanor, can you say a closing prayer, please? Why are you shaking? You don't want to pray to the Lord?
No, I said I knew you were going to pick me.
You talk to our Father. Thank you.
I had a feeling. No problem. Let's pray. Let's pray to my Father, our Father. Amen. Let's pray. Father in heaven, thank you so much for being an awesome God that owns the whole world, that controls it. You hold the world in the palm of your hand. And so we're safe in your arms, knowing that you have got our back. I want to thank you for literally making us in your image, in your likeness. I want to thank you for making us in a whole range of colors to show how big and how great you are. And that's only but a tip of how big you are. I want to thank you for being a God of love that allows us to have conversations like this so that we can know more about your character and what you desire for us. I pray, Father, that you'll give us the love that you have so that we can give it to others as well. I pray that you'll teach us how to love ourselves and to love our neighbor as ourselves as well. I pray that you'll help us all to navigate this difficult topic and really break the narrative of what we have been taught by people prior to us who have had a negative way of thinking. I pray that we'll be able to teach others. I pray that we'll be put in positions of influence, no matter how big or small, so that we'll be able to show people that literally we're all equal in your sight and you've literally made us in your image. And so we shouldn't be seeing people as less than or people as more than because of the different colors of our skin. I pray that you'll literally continue to be with us as we continue to develop our character to be more like you. And I pray that ultimately, Father, you prepare us for your kingdom so that we can all go home with you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen, amen, amen. Again, thank you guys so much for coming. Any announcements, guys, now? Marissa, Chris, any announcements? No?
Yeah, Sabbath is in like half an hour or so.
All right.
For those of you who want to join in.
All right, cool. All right. See you guys later on. Have a good Sabbath.
You guys have a good one.
You too.
Happy Sabbath. Bye.
Take care. Happy Sabbath.